The Chicago Wilderness Corporate Council is very pleased to be, again, the presenting sponsor of Congress this year. Our appreciation also goes to the individual council members who have sponsored the program today. The Corporate Council was established in 2002 to engage the business community in the cross-sector collaborative work of Chicago wilderness. And in this way, I think it's the perfect embodiment of the theme of today's Congress. Although the work of some of the 44 members of the Corporate Council may differ from traditional conservation organizations, it is this very diversity that enhances and deepens the work of our broader alliance. Our employees' engagement, customer interactions, philanthropic activities, and community involvement all provide paths to the larger region community of people who aren't necessarily active or even interested in conservation on a day-to-day basis. The same is true of many other members and partners of Chicago Wilderness, working with people every day whose connection to the natural world are so varied and deeply rooted in their diverse personal experiences and shared community histories. It is this individual and organizational diversity that lies at the heart of our collective strength. This morning, I have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. John Francis, a man whose own journey into environmental activism started in a truly unique way. An environmental educator and leader, Dr. Francis is the former United Nations Environment Program Goodwill Ambassador to the world's grassroots communities. He is the founder of Planet Walk, a nonprofit environmental awareness organization, and the author of Planet Walker, 17 Years of Silence, 22 Years of Walking, published by the National Geographic Society.
Thank you for being here. And I usually begin speaking with those words, thank you for being here, because after being silent for 17 years, those were the first words that I spoke. Thank you for being here. And I sincerely mean that, and I sincerely meant that when they were the first words after 17 years, because I was thanking the people who had come to hear me speak, as I'm thanking you for being here to hear me speak, because I understood after 17 years of silence that in communication, it takes at least two. It takes someone to send a message, but also, very importantly, it takes someone to hear the message. And so I was thanking my mother and father and my family who had gathered in Washington, D.C. on the 20th anniversary, along with a host of other people and media and National Geographic, all to hear me utter my first words. And so I was thanking them for being here because I was really grateful for the communication that was about to happen and that was happening. Now, my mother, LaJava, she was so excited that I started speaking that she jumped up from her chair and she raised her hand and she started waving it and she said, "Hallelujah, Johnny is talking." I said, if you hadn't heard your son speak for 17 years, I think you would be excited. You know, so now I looked out and I saw my dad. He was looking at me and he was kind of shaking his head. And that's because I didn't recognize my voice when I started speaking. In fact, I turned around to look and see who it was that was saying what I was thinking. And then I realized that that was me. Oh, that was a funny one. And so I started to chuckle to myself. That's when my dad looked at me and he said, "Yeah, he really is crazy. Look at him up there laughing." So I want to take you on this journey because we're all on this journey, and I want to share this part with you as something about the journey is that we don't know actually where it's leading us. You know, we kind of have a general idea, but we really don't know what's going to happen. And I can tell we're on the same kind of journey because as you start this organization, and you have partnerships and you meet other people and this synergy starts to happen, you see things that happen that you had no idea was going to happen, but you know, they're good things. So let's keep on moving. Let's take another step. Well, back in 1971, I saw an oil spill. And I gave up riding in cars. It was not right away now, because, you know, I mean, that's a big step in California to not ride a car. It took a friend's death to convince me that, you know, we were both, he was a deputy sheriff, that's right. He was a deputy sheriff in the little town I lived in. And he wasn't really my best friend, see, because we grew these plants in our yard. Let's just suffice it to say that I did inhale. But that's okay now, I can be president, right? Yeah. I didn't hold my breath. And so Jerry, he wasn't my best friend, but we were friends because the town was only about 300 people. You know, that's not a big town. You know everybody. Everybody knows you, what you're doing and what you're not doing. And Jerry lost his life in a boating accident. And the day he did, I decided that I was going to go walk to San Francisco. And it's actually not, we didn't go that far to San Francisco. We went to San Anselmo, which is only 20 miles away. Well, 20 miles away. That's a long. Well, how many people here have walked 20 miles? Thank you so much, because see, you're my people. I would ask someone that in some crowds, and everybody would be looking around at each other. Well, we walked 20 miles, and so you know what a 20-mile walk is. We walked 20 miles to the Lions here to hear the Youngbloods. How many people here know the Youngbloods? All the old people, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the Youngbloods, they sang that song, like, come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, got to. That's right, they're going to be happy about that. And if I sang more, I'd have to pay them, so it's just, you're part of this now. And so we went to see this group, the Youngbloods, because they lived in our town, and so we walked 20 miles in, my girlfriend and I, Jean. And when we got there, they were ending their set with, come on, people. And because if you left at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to walk 20 miles, you're not going to get there at 8 or 9 or 10, and unless you're running really fast. We got there just as they were ending their final set, and they said to us, oh, John, Gene, you guys walked all the way from Point Reyes. Come on, let's give you a ride back. And we decided, no, we're going to stay here in San Anselmo, and then we're going to rest up by the Holiday Inn, their swimming pool, for a couple of days. And you don't need to suffer when you're doing this walking business. And then we'll walk back. Well, it was on that walk back that I decided that, Jerry, we did this as a commemoration for him. He was about 26 years old. I was 26. And so we shared something there in our ages. And he had a perfect job, and, deputy sheriff, that was a good job. And he had a beautiful wife and family and a house with actually a white picket fence around it, And so he was living the American dream, and I thought, here he was living the American dream, and just like that, he was gone. And it made me think about what I should be doing, and how fragile life was. And I thought, well, I wanted to walk for a long time. I always wanted to just, get out of my car and start walking, especially after the oil spill. So I found myself walking on the road, and I said, well, here I am, I'm walking now, I'm just going to keep walking. Now, my girlfriend, Jean, she looked at me when I told her my decision with, all the love in her heart, and, she said, bye. But she wasn't that cold about it, we were still going to be friends. And it took a while before I called my parents to tell them that I had actually given up riding and driving in motorized vehicles. Mom, I can't come see you right like I thought I was going to. I gave up riding in cars. My oil spill. Dad? You know my dad, right? He wants to know why I didn't do this when I was 16. I didn't know about the environment then. The environment, Mom. Air, they're in Philadelphia, see, and I don't think the environment has reached them yet. Well, okay, but I'll call you and let you know. What? But I'm really happy, though. No, I am really happy. Oh, okay. Bye. Mothers are like that. She said if I was really happy, I wouldn't have to say so. And maybe she was right. Because it took me a while after I started this walking business to really find my place. I ended up arguing with people, which you saw. I argued all the time about whether one person could make a difference. And yeah, people just said, you know, John, you're riding in a car, not riding in a car is not going to make any difference at all. All it's really going to mean is more gasoline for us to do what we want to do. Now, if I had been a wise person, I said if I had been a wise person, I would have said, well, that's great. If what I'm doing allows you to do more of what you want to do, then we should celebrate each other. If I had been that, that's the big word there. And so I just argued and argued with people until my 27th birthday, and I felt that I talked way too much without knowing what I was saying, and so that maybe I should take a break. I don't want to go into why 27. Briefly, I had been listening to the Beatles, see. A lot of music is in my head here. Number 9, number 9, number 9. That's 3 nines. 27. Special. Well, I have to do something on this birthday because it's a special number. So I'm not going to speak for one day for my birthday as a gift to my community, and boy, were they happy. You know, thank you, John, thank you. Except after the 3rd and the 4th day, they started to wonder. They said, okay, you know, this is getting old now. After a week, they got really concerned. Me, I kept going because I kept learning. This was the first time I was learning anything since I started talking. The reason why I was learning is because I was listening to other people. I was listening. What I usually did was listen just enough to think I knew what someone was going to say, and if it didn't fit with what I already knew or believed, I would stop listening to them and start thinking about what I was going to say back to them to prove to them that they were wrong, I was right. Even if it was something I believed, I could say it better. And so what I did was actually sever communications. The listening part, that important part. But now that I was listening, I was learning things that, I didn't know before. Because I didn't have that filter of, I'm only going to listen to what I believe. I'm only going to hear what I already know. So it went for another week and another week until finally I had to write my parents and say, listen, I'm not going to call on the phone because I've decided to not speak for a year. I sent that letter to my mother. Your dad will be on the next plane. Because back in Philadelphia, they heard all about California, and they knew that I had been taken over by a strange religious cult. First, I can't walk, so I can't go visit them. I mean, I can't drive, so I can't go visit them. And now I can't talk, so I can't call them up anymore. Yep, California. Strange religious cult. So my father did fly out. He came out to see me. And Gene picked him up at the airport, and he met me walking down the road with my banjo. I had picked up the banjo to learn how to play, and now I practice all the time. And so I was I was still learning. And my dad saw me, and they pulled over and stopped, and he opened the door, and I hadn't seen him for such a long time, and I touched his hand, and it was such a good feeling to touch his hand. And he said, "Hi, son." And I smiled, and I went, and I could see him. Gene said, "I told you, but it's okay. Let's go to the hotel." My dad said, "Get in, we'll go to the hotel." It's all right. he'll find us. My dad was, clouds are raining on him. We walked to the hotel. My dad and I walked to the hotel. My dad was already there, and I got to the room with him, and he looked at me and he said, "Okay, son, what's the scam?" There's no scam. I'm not talking. And he goes, "You got these people in the palm of your hand now. What are you going to do?" What's he talking about? And I'm like writing notes because I tried to talk to him with my mime and sign language, and he said, "Oh, no, don't do that. I can't stand that stuff. Just write it down, write it down." And so we wrote notes. I wrote notes to him for the whole day. And I told him about my dream to go to college. He laughed and he laughed. He says, "You don't even talk." Well, he called my mother up. He said, "Yeah, I've seen him. He's okay. No, he doesn't do drugs. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't drink. No, he doesn't talk. No, people seem to like him. I don't know. There's nothing I can do. No, I'm just going to come home. I think we should just leave him out here and hope that he never comes back to Philadelphia. No, this would not work there." Okay. And so my dad flew back to Philadelphia and leaving me to my own devices. And I was really relieved because I thought I was going to be reprogrammed, really, seriously. But he left me there, and I started walking around, continued to play the banjo, and I'd walk up to Oregon, and I'd walk down back down to San Francisco again. And I would do that. I spent time in the wilderness. I looked for little green spots on the map. When it was a green spot, that's where I wanted to go. And so the first wilderness I went to was up in the Siskiyou Mountains called the Kalmiopsis Wilderness in Oregon. And I really had never done any wilderness camping before, so I had to learn by trial and error. And so the 75-pound pack that I carried went way down. I read about John Muir with a bag of beans, and that's a good trip. That's a good trick if you can do that. So I did. I got down to something reasonable, and on 1983, I started walking across the United States. That's after going to school, because I came out of the wilderness and went to school at Southern Oregon State College without speaking. They let me in, and this is a story. I want to tell this story, and I don't want to run over time, but here, because they let me in. They said they had a special program for me, which was the older returning student, they said. And you could get credit for what you did outside in life, regular, normal life. And so I signed up for that, and 2 years later, ended up with 2 years of credit. For working in the wilderness. I lived in the wilderness, and I wrote and published my own journals and painted and all kinds of things. So it was 2 years of credit. And my dad came out to see me graduate, and he was quite impressed. He says, "Your mother and I are very proud of you. I want you to know that, but what are you going to do with a bachelor's degree? You don't ride in cars and talk." And I hunched my shoulders, I put my backpack on, and I started walking east. And I walked up to University of Montana or Washington first, and I built a boat and rowed that boat across Puget Sound, and then sold the boat, and then continued on to University of Montana, who I had written a few years earlier and said, "I'd be interested in attending your master's program in environmental studies, but I should be there in about 2 years because I'm walking. And I don't talk, and so I can't call you." And they were happy. They said, "Oh yeah, come on up." So I did. I got to the University of Montana and was given a scholarship, the Erasmus Award, with a TA position. The TA position, right? And so I did. I had the discussion class. 12 students who, those poor guys, they didn't know what they had signed up for. But when the bell rang and it was time for class, I had a friend who understood my sign language get up and explain and interpret for me. So, I get up and I say, my name is John Francis, and I'm your TA for the quarter. And I could see all of them looking at me, and then looking down at their schedule to see if they could get out of this class. And at the end of the quarter, though, that I was nominated and voted as the most popular and the most effective TA for the course on natural resources and the human and natural resources of the state of Montana, which everybody had to take. I was told later by the director of the program, he said, you should know I had to put out so many fires about you. You're teaching my son with this guy who doesn't talk, and I pay so much money. And my dad came for my graduation again, master's degree, University of Montana, Missoula. He was like, I can't even believe this, but what are you going to do with a master's degree? You don't ride in cars and you don't talk. I hunch my shoulders, I put my backpack on, I grab my banjo, and I keep on going east. And I get to Watertown, South Dakota. I spend the year there, or the winter there, printing, learning how to print and being a printer. And while I'm there, I write to some different universities further east and tell them about my journey. And the University of Wisconsin in Madison writes back, and they say, we'd love you to come to our school, and we can support you. I showed that letter to my dad, who had come out to visit me, and he said, hey, sounds like these people want to give you money. Now, I knew that must be the case if my father said so, because he was that kind of guy. He wanted to know how much you were getting paid for doing this walking business. Well, I came to the University of Wisconsin and I started my study and figured out after doing my coursework, I had to write a dissertation for a PhD, and I couldn't figure out what it was I wanted to write on until something hit me. I think it was my major professor who had written on oil spills, that I should write on oil spills. So I did. I wrote on the costs and conventions of oil spills in the marine environment, pollution. Well, that was a good thing, except my colleagues kept saying to me, John, what kind of job do you think you're going to get writing on oil spills? Nobody's interested in oil spills. And they were right. I wasn't worried about a job because I was getting paid to go to school. I was a fellow. And then something happened. 1989, March. It was just an anniversary a little while ago. Exxon Valdez. Who knew? The biggest oil spill in our history. And there was only one person studying oil spills at a PhD level. Admiral Henn is on the phone. Francis, do you want to talk to him? He wants to talk to somebody. Well, everybody was calling, the New U.S. Coast Guard was calling about this guy who was studying oil spills. And my major professor talked to him because Admiral Henn's on the phone going, I want to speak to John Francis. He doesn't speak. Well, we're trying to get him to come out here to Washington to work on this project with the Oil Pollution Act of 1990 staff. He doesn't use motorized vehicles. What does that mean? Listen, do you have anybody there normal we can talk to? That would be my major professor. So he did speak to him, and I did finish my final exams, and I had to write 5 papers in 3 days. My dad came out. He was, happy and proud, of course. He looked around and he said, I don't know how you do this, son, My sister, my aunt, my sister, she says I should just leave you alone because you seem to be doing so much better when you're not saying anything. And that was true. So, but you know, PhDs are a dime a dozen, he said. What are you going to do with a PhD if you don't ride in cars and talk? Well, I put my backpack on, after hunching my shoulders, of course, grabbed my banjo, and I headed east, all the way to the East Coast, and I arrived in time for Thanksgiving at my home in Philadelphia. And then to the Atlantic Ocean. I put my foot in the Atlantic Ocean 7 years and 1 day after I started on the East Coast. So it took me 7 years to walk across the United States. And started speaking on Earth Day that year, 1990, which is the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, because I wanted to remind myself that environment, I wanted to speak for it. And that my idea of environment had changed from being not just about loss of species and habitat and pollution and all the things that we traditionally think of as environment, but that it included people, that people were part of the environment. And so how we treated each other was really at the foundation of what was going on in the physical environment around us. And so it was about human rights and gender equality and economic equity and all the ways we relate to one another. And that was the message I had, and that's what I learned in the 17 years of walking in silence, and the 7 years walking across the United States, studying formally and informally. If someone had said to me, John, you know, you want to make a difference, I tell you what, just get out of your car right now. Just get out of your car and start walking east. Yeah, just start walking east. And I'd start walking east, and I got just a little further down the road, and then they said, oh yeah, and shut up too. You're going to make a difference. I would have thought they had been back in my garden, you know, plants with Jerry was pulling out, you know, and that they had a little too much of that stuff. But that's what happened. I mean, that's the kind of journey we're on, where we just take the next step and the next step with our intentions being what they are, we will succeed. Now, I've just come back from this humongous trip here. I started out in 2005 walking back across the United States in segments, maybe 100, 200 miles every time I'd walk around Earth Day. It was my Earth Day way of celebrating Earth Day. Eventually, I started teaching at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I took my students with me. And now that I kind of teach off and on there, but I still bring students with me, and we are in Indiana. We've gotten to Indiana, and this last spring break, I took 11 students with me, 9 students with me, and maybe 10 other people with me, walking in Amish country through Indiana. And right after that 6 days of walking, 5 days of walking, I was driven to Chicago and put on a plane to Shanghai, China, and then taken to Hangzhou. It's a 14-hour nonstop flight to China. And I got to China and was taken to Hangzhou. It's a small city of about 10 million people. And I was invited by a high school, it's a Chinese International School in Hong Kong, but they have a campus in Hangzhou on the mainland. And the students there had read Planet Walker, and they had decided that they wanted to do a planet walk, and they wanted me to come with them. So they paid all the stuff, you know, and got me over there. And when I got there, my bags were missing, but I had my shoes on that were like just my kind of leisure shoes. And we said, okay, we got 6 days of walking now. And we started walking 6 days through China. It was such an experience, and I want to show you some photographs if someone will help me. Ah, here they come now. Because this isn't PowerPoint. I don't know how to do that. But I want to show you some photographs of the walk in Indiana and then the 6-day walk in China. I just got back last night from China. And, good. This is Indiana. And I mean, it was freezing cold. It was below zero, or no, it wasn't that cold. No, it was below freezing. It was 19. It was a wind chill of 19 that day. And here are my students mixed in with all the rest of my Planet Walkers. Some are from Indiana, some from Alaska, some from California, and the oldest is 74 and the youngest is 13. So we walked for 5 days, and what we do is a planet walk is this: you walk through the environment and you listen to the environment and you interact with it through the people. And so we were doing that. This is what it was looking like. Usually there's grass growing and the corn is up, but this has been a unusually hard winter, and I don't need to tell you guys that. And that's my my class, the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. And here are the students in Hangzhou, the Planet Walk 2014. The students there, as we do sometimes in the United States in our Planet Walk, we take water samples. We're trying to make something called a planet line, where we look for data. And there's qualitative and quantitative data. And this is the quantitative data that students are collecting on water quality. Hangzhou and China, when I listen to all the work that's being done here, I know that this is a model for China. For many places in China, the people are starving or really want to see the environment become a priority in their lives. And so even though there's much pollution, there are a lot of people who want to see that change. On our Planet Walk, some of our Planet Walkers stopped to take part in the Tai Chi morning exercise as we were walking up the mountain. And this is one of our Planet Walkers. Tea leaves and tea plantations are just crowded in wherever they can be. I like to look at China and I go, oh my God, it looks like us on steroids, with the development that is just kind of running wild now. There's so much money there and so much development there that you can see out in the countryside where houses were very traditional have now become palatial. And this is a field of plants that are turned into canola oil. And the whole countryside was planted with this, and it's just a very beautiful sight. And there's some traditional housing, traditional village, and you can see that it's, very simple. My students that I walked with all spoke Mandarin, and only my expression of ni hao was my only good morning or hello, was the only thing I knew. I learned a little bit more. I don't want to let you endure that. And tea plantations, I got to paint. And painting for me really makes me stop, and this is the one painting I'll show you, but it really makes me stop and be somewhere. And I can tell you, I had been walking for a few days before I got to the place where I could stop and sit down and paint. And when I did, I really felt connected to that place, to China. And that's all the photos I have, but it's about what I wanted to do here, and what I want to do is have more partners in China. I think it will be, planet walking will become a very big thing in China. God, I'm a celebrity over there. I couldn't believe it. There were more cameras following me around than, you know, Angelina Jolie. That's not true. But they really did want to see me come back again, and they really are interested in education and how they can change it, and how people can, how their students can experience the environment through each other. And I think that's something that we're looking at here in our own country, is how we get to experience environment through each other as well. And now I'm getting ready to go back to my vow of silence and end with some banjo music, which is the final part of Life Celebration. And I want to thank you again for being here. Thank you.